Hello, welcome back to the Manaburnt podcast. We haven't done one of these in a little while. It's been about a month, but here we are back again. I'm joined by Lily, as always.
Hello.
And we've got returning our friend Nick.
Hello.
Hello. So today is going to be quite a casual one. We're just going to talk about video games. All three of us have played a few.
Yeah, the video game conversation has been pending for quite some time, and I think it's about time. So, yeah.
Yeah. Manaburnt isn't all about video games, but most of the stuff I put on there is about video games. That's where I come from in terms of geeky stuff. You know, I started with video games as a kid and only got into board games and RPGs within the last 6 or 7 years. I think to kick it off, I think we'll just start with our background in terms of video games. Like, what games did we start off with? What was very important to our video game development in our childhood and things like that, and how that's shaped us into what we're into now.
I think I have the most embarrassing and interesting stories, so I'm very happy to start if you like.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, as everyone knows now, my parents are massive gamers, my mom particularly, and I remember spending countless hours seeing them play computer games, in the old school early 90s PCs that could hardly load a screen at a time. And one of the first things I saw them playing was Civilization and Doom. My mom used to have this habit of, if she had had a really bad day at work, she would go home, she would load Doom, she will pick the chainsaw and the cheat of invulnerability and just start killing shit.
Brilliant.
Just like that. And I would be watching her doing this at the sweet age of 6 or something like that. So, a very, very safe childhood. But actually, the first game I remember playing in that computer, and here is where the laugh comes, so you can go judging if you like, but I don't care, was actually the PC game for Barbie fashion design of 1997.
Hardcore.
Nice.
And haters gonna hate, whatever, I don't care. But it was actually a really cool game.
Okay.
I don't think there were many games that did that sort of stuff, in computer at least, back then. It was very much like the sort of paper dolls that me and my auntie used to have when we were little. And you can sort of, swap the clothes accordingly. But, here, the cool thing was that you actually got to play with textures and colors. And it was actually quite educational, not just about dressing up your Barbie, as you're probably thinking I was doing. So it was quite engaging because, out of the blue, it was not just I go pick up a Barbie, put some clothes on it. It was oh, okay, this T-shirt can be many colors and it can have these weird patterns on it. And what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And it was actually really creative.
All right.
And maybe this will explain now to some of our readers why I play silly games like Love Nikki. You are all welcome.
Yeah. So what's that? That's the mobile game, which is about fashion design as well.
Yeah. Well, it's a fashion RPG. There is a ridiculous amount of story into it. I will not go into the depths of it.
Okay.
Because I don't think anyone wants to hear that. But it is technically a fashion RPG, and it's very thoughtful. It's very thorough, and the community is very nice, which is actually one of the reasons why I like it.
Oh, nice.
Because
that helps.
Mobile and online games these days tend to be a bit vicious. And it's not quite the case here. But yes, this is how the dark, mysterious background of Lily being into fashion games started.
Well, yeah, there's a definite thread there through your video game past. That's interesting. If I go back to the first PC game I played, there's no thread there because my first one was the Pingu game.
Oh, Pingu!
When I was probably like 5 years old or something. On our first PC, like a Windows 95 or something. But yeah, no, the first game I really got into was Super Mario 64 on the N64.
Yep.
But again, with that, there's not much of a link there because after that, I basically never had another Nintendo console again.
Yeah, and you're
And,
not much of a platformer player anyway, are you?
No, not really. No, I don't have a lot of nostalgia for that sort of thing, despite that being my first like proper game I played, and that was like all I played for the first few years. So yeah, but there's some other things that were more important to me later, like mostly PC stuff. So quite early on, I was playing Age of Empires and stuff like that, which was I think the first one came out in the mid-90s, but
Yeah,
I played the second one mostly, which came out in '98, I think, or something like that.
I believe so.
But yeah, Age of Empires 2 is still one of my most favorite games of all time. And I mean, people should know what it is, but if they don't, it's the classic RTS. It's pretty much what all other real-time strategy games were modeled upon after that, and it just still holds up so well to this day. And
Oh,
you can see that
definitely,
by
yeah.
the version they released on Steam a few years ago. It's still just there's a thriving like online community for it, and there has been for 2 decades or more, pretty much.
Yeah, and a
Um,
competitive scene too. People run
I think
tournaments
I
for Age of Empires
I
still.
wasn't as big on
yeah,
Age of Empires as I was on Civilization, but I think my parental bias there may have had something to do.
yeah. No, yeah. For me, it was because my older cousin and my uncle played a lot of it. So yeah,
Age of Empires.
there is a like a competitive scene for it. But when it came out again recently on PC and I tried to play online, I realized how inadequately just awful I am at that game against real people. Because I think all I
Yeah.
used to do as a kid was just like build pretty little towns and like nice, castles and stuff and defend it from just like easy AI. But I play against real people online and they're already like coming at me with a full army by the time I'm building my second house. So turns out I'm not that good against RTSs despite playing them for most of my life.
I think this is a core issue in RTS games. Like many
Mm,
of us grew up playing like Warcraft 3 and the
mm,
first StarCraft and Command and Conquer games and
Oh man,
Age of
Command and
Empires,
Conquer.
all these, right? And when you're young, you only have your friends to play, and you think you're good because you can beat your friends.
yeah,
And in some cases, people have this self-esteem of like, well, yeah, I'm a good Warcraft player. I've always have. And then you go online and you face the fact that you're not very good, not at all.
yeah.
So
I think
yeah,
in a lot of cases, my problem is that I'm just not very competitive.
Oh
Like
god, yeah.
throughout my whole life, I've never been driven by wanting to win. I just want to just have fun through the process. I don't want the game to end by me winning. I just want to keep playing. So that was my issue a lot of the time.
yep, same with me,
Yeah,
definitely.
and in that sort of game as well, if you don't have the competitive spirit, it kind of defeats the point, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
that's actually one of the first memories I have of playing RTSs, and in this case, Civilization, is my mom and my dad shouting at each other because, why are you killing my poor traders with your spaceships? So if you don't have that sort of motivation going in the background, the game just essentially becomes, like you said, oh, I'm gonna build this bucolic, idealistic world
yeah,
and hope that everything just turns fine.
yeah. So what about you, Nick? What did you enjoy early on?
Well, I actually have a very vivid memory of my first like serious gaming experience because we're back in the early 90s. Not a lot of kids had computers,
Hmm.
but I had one because my father was an accountant.
Ah,
So there was this one summer where I was sent in the mountains to live with my granny for the summer. It was like 1 month. And
nice.
for
Nice.
some reason, we didn't have TV there in her house. I'm pretty sure we didn't have like phone,
Wow.
and the radio only had one station in it.
Oh God.
So yeah, it was an exile. Uh, but I had my 486 with black and white monitor and like Windows 95 and everything.
Wow.
And I remember that I had Doom. I had Cosmos Cosmic Encounter, which is,
Oh, wow.
or was it Cosmic Adventure? But it's like a very old platformer.
Mm.
And I had Golden Axe, which is probably still one of my favorite games ever.
Oh, nice.
So I spent the entire month just playing through Doom and Golden Axe, and I remember the moment when I defeated the final boss, Death Adder. I had like the adrenaline rushing, and I felt my heart beating, and it was like an intense moment. So yeah, this was definitely like a memorable experience. I must have been like 6 years old or something.
Nice.
And yeah, and ever since then I've been a gamer. I've identified as gamer. I've always had like a decent computer, and we played tons of like Warcraft 3. We played lots of shooters like classic Counter-Strike, Half-Life, all that.
Oh God,
I
yeah.
also enjoyed like story games. And since I'm from Eastern Europe, Heroes 3 was definitely an important part of my gaming life. It's it's only the best game ever.
I've never actually heard of Heroes 3 before, so you're gonna have to do some elaboration here.
Okay. So it's a strategy game. Basically, you have a castle, a starting castle, and a starting hero, and you build little buildings in your castle to train units, to amass an army, and go take over other castles. But it's extremely deep. There's tons of like races, and they have all like intricacies. The different soldiers have different like strengths and weaknesses, and there's spells that you can learn. There's items that you can equip to your heroes. It's crazy. Like people take 10, 15 years to study this game, and they still find new things. Then we have Russia, and Russians produce fan content and still support the game to this day. It came out in, I'm not sure, but maybe 2002, something like this.
Yeah.
It's a very old game. And there's 2 unofficial expansions that are absolutely great. So this game is really, really big in Eastern Europe for whatever reason. And back in the day, if you're a kid, you go to the like internet cafe or at home, and this is what people play and they're passionate about.
Oh wow!
And also the other crazy thing is that you can see like a 30-year-old, like classic nerdy guy, mathematician kind of guy, sit and play with a 9-year-old kid, and
that's adorable.
Yeah. Because it's a turn-based game, it's not an action game, so you can take your time and explain what's going on. And when you're a kid, you're like, wow, this is fascinating. I didn't know all this stuff. And then those guys, they would also like find satisfaction in teaching a young kid something cool. So it was this like cultural thing almost.
Nice. Yeah, I've always found it interesting how gaming for a long time, and probably still is, quite different between like Western and Eastern Europe. Because half of my family's from Serbia, so I go over there, and I used to get a lot of influence from my older cousin from Serbia in terms of gaming. So that's why a lot of my earlier memories is like PC gaming, because pretty much no one had a console. Everyone just had PCs.
Exactly.
For the most part.
The ironic thing is, at least back in the day, consoles was what rich kids had, because like PlayStation was considered a luxury, and most people had a computer anyway to work. So and in Western Europe and the US, it's the opposite really, because the console is like the budget-friendly option, but we didn't get this here. So
yeah.
I think this is the reason Eastern Europe in general has this strong PC culture. It translates to esports now. We have these like Russian CSGO teams and all that. So Dota is big too.
Yeah, the little I know about esports, it's mostly PC dominated, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting how that happens, and then from that you find that different genres of games become bigger. So like on a PC, you're going to get far better strategy games, far better RPGs and things like that. Whereas on console, you end up with completely different things. So that's why a lot of my favorite genres of games to this day, strategy games we've already talked about, and RPGs, and then a few shooters, but more the sort of hardcore style PC shooters rather than the stuff you'd get on a console.
Yeah, and I think, I had never thought about that, Alex, but I think you're absolutely right, because as much as I started playing on the PC, my main thing is that I've always been a Nintendo girl.
Yeah.
So like, Nick, you were saying how, having a console was for rich kids. Well, I got really lucky, and for my first communion, which is this thing that happens in Catholic countries. If you don't come from a Catholic country, this is probably going to sound really alien, but if you have a Catholic family, you have this sort of big celebration when you are around 9 years old or something like that, where you sort of join the Christian community, and it's usually quite a big important thing. It's not so much anymore, but when I was little in the early 90s and late 90s, this was still a very, very big part of Spanish culture. So my
Mm.
godfather and your godparents are supposed to be like a very important figure in this entire process, and they always contribute to the whole sort of event with some form of important gift or special gift. And my godfather had the incredible insight to buy me a Nintendo 64. A Nintendo 64, which was not so much aimed to just me, but the entire family. I was actually not the first person to play that Nintendo 64. It was actually my mom, to make
Of
sure,
course.
quote unquote, that the game is working correctly.
Oh yeah, and also
um,
to test it for poison, I'm sure the
Yeah,
console.
absolutely. So, my mom is a complete addict of platform games, and it came with Super Mario 64. So I realized that at the
Nice.
age of 9, I was absolutely rubbish at playing platformers. So, my mom pretty much was playing this. But one of the games I really enjoyed of playing in the 64, and that became very much a memory that I've cherished since then, was playing Mario Tennis. And
Okay.
I know this may sound really bizarre, but like you said, you perhaps don't expect that sort of sports game, unless it's something like Football Manager or something like that, to be on the PC.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Pretty
Mario
much.
Tennis was super fun, and so was Mario Golf as a result of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't as good as Mario Golf as I was at Mario Tennis, but it was one of those games that I remember so fondly playing, as a young kid, and I'm not so young. Sometimes when I go home now, still, and my Nintendo 64 still works, I hook it up, and I can still enjoy it. But yeah, most people kind of just go like, "What?" It's slightly different these days because you have the Wii, and obviously you have all of the new things for Xbox and whatnot. And these type of games are perhaps now a bit more popular because of the interaction that you get.
Yeah.
That's the
Motion
entire
controls
point.
and
Yeah,
VR and stuff. Yeah.
exactly. But I guess I'm pretty weird. It was Mario Tennis, and if it wasn't Mario Tennis, it was actually the Star Wars pod racing game, which
Oh
was the
yeah.
coolest game in the universe. I
This
spent
game
That was
is
one
Yeah.
I wish I had
perfect.
when I was a kid. Yeah. I
Ah,
never had it. I
it
literally
was.
only ever had Mario 64, and that's it. I don't know why I'd never got a new game. That was all I had until I jumped to PlayStation 2. That was my next console.
Yeah,
When I was
yeah.
9 years old.
I never actually varied from. We were always a Nintendo household. So Nintendo
Mm.
64. Then when the GameCube came out, it was a Christmas present, and again, it was very much aimed to be sort of a collective, family thing. And then it was the Nintendo Wii when it came out for my mom's birthday, and again as family activity, because my sister was now a bit older and she very much enjoyed, well, playing Wii Sports and that sort of stuff and doing
Mm.
knees and being cute. But yeah, I think that's also the reason why I don't really get along with PlayStation and Xbox games these days, because it kind of feels like, I've missed that. And I'm not that interested. It's just exactly the same stuff I can play on PC, but on a controller that
Yeah.
my hands can't actually utilize because I'm tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Spain has a very strong Nintendo culture. Actually, most of
Yeah,
my
we do.
Spaniard friends are really into Mario.
Yeah, we do. And I think actually it's not so much because of the big consoles, but because of the portable consoles, like the
Mm.
Game Boys.
Mm.
The original brick gray Game Boy and the Game Boy Color. And particularly, I mean, I'm sure when my sister was younger, and the later stages of Nintendo Game Boy Advance, and obviously the DS came out, I swear every single kid in the city would have it. So yes, I think you're right. There's, for whatever reason, because I don't really know why or how. But
Well, the
Nintendo
reason is
is
Pokemon, probably. But
Well,
yeah.
yeah, most likely. I suspect so. But yeah, no, Nintendo does have. I've known a lot more Spanish people as well that have or have had a Nintendo rather than people from the UK, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I couldn't really say, like, you can sort of say for like Bulgaria and other countries around there, or for Spain, these sort of trends, but I don't really know what I'd say for the UK. Like, there's just a bit of everything here. Maybe more console focused, just in general, like PlayStation and Xbox these days and stuff like that. But I've kind of flip flopped over the years. Like I said, I started off with a Nintendo 64, and then only played one game on that, and then I played PC games for most of my younger childhood, and then I got a PS2, and PS2 was when I properly got into gaming. Then that was like the golden age of gaming for me, the PS2
The
era.
golden age of gaming.
There were just
was
so many good
PS2.
games on the PS2. No, for me, definitely. Some of my favorite games on that, like I discovered Metal Gear Solid on the PS2.
Oh,
I
yes.
skipped the PS1, so I never got the first game until later. But that's one of my favorite game series of all time now, Metal Gear Solid. So when I just randomly discovered that on PS2 without knowing what the hell it was, my mind was blown because it's just weird, just absolutely insane story, and just the gameplay is so good to this day. It was, in a lot of ways ahead of its time. But I won't go on about Metal Gear too much.
Yeah, but I mean, PS2 in general has one of the strongest catalogs. You have like Shadow of the Colossus and the God of War games.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
God, yes.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
For some strange reason, I don't know if maybe it's because things have been re-released or something, but I always associate all of these games with PlayStation 3. But I think that's actually when I was most exposed, when the PlayStation 3 came out. That's actually when I actually and I think it's probably because of uni. A lot of people when I went to uni seem to have PlayStation 3, and I just know it better than the others. Not even PlayStation 4. I don't care about PlayStation 4, to be honest.
Well, it's interesting because depending on which console is like the one on top of that generation, you'll see most people have that. So PS2 was like the dominant one, and then it flipped to the Xbox 360. That became the big one and had the most games on it and stuff. But unfortunately, I went the other way and decided to stick with PlayStation, and I went to PlayStation 3 as well. But that was when online gaming in terms of consoles started to get really big. And I was like on my own on my PlayStation 3 while everyone else was playing on their Xboxes together.
PlayStation did win the next generations.
Yeah. In the current generation now, people say the PS4 is like the best one now. So, but again, I flip flopped again, and I went back to becoming like a fully fledged PC gamer around sort of like the best way to game.
And actually, I think these days I'm mostly a PC gamer, just because it's convenience. Like you said, Nick, you work on a PC, you already have it. It's simply easier and cheaper.
Depending on what we want to do. Yeah, if there's more option.
And I am one of those rare people who actually use a controller for most of their games on PC.
Ew.
So yeah, I know. So I kind of get the best of both worlds.
I mean, the option's there if you want to. That's what's good about
it. Exactly. I do have a beautiful mechanical keyboard, don't you worry. But I also have a beautiful Xbox One controller with.
Yeah, it depends on the game. Yeah, I'll plug in my PS4 controller, and if there's like third-person action games or things with driving in or something like that, I'll use a controller over a keyboard and mouse.
Oh yeah, I play a lot of platformers, and they are almost always better with a controller.
Okay, fine, I'll give you that.
But it's a matter of personal preference. I don't play Overwatch on a controller, so don't worry.
Well, yeah, it's a distinct disadvantage in a shooter for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. But isn't that actually? I mean, you two will know about this much more than I do. But isn't that actually like a very hot topic for the sort of elite and pro players of esports, particularly things like that, like Overwatch and whatnot?
I have no idea.
Whether you're actually playing with a controller or with keyboard and mouse.
Yeah, not anymore. It used to be a discussion, especially like around 2016 when Overwatch came out initially.
Mm.
I remember that Blizzard tried to make cross-platform a thing, and they said, okay, we have Overwatch for Xbox and PlayStation, and also for PC, and people can play together. And most of the people, like of press and fans, everybody was like, are you mental? Like, what do you mean? Like, if somebody is playing with mouse and keyboard, they will obliterate the other guy. And I remember Jeff Kaplan was like, oh, no, you see, there's people who are really skilled. They're very impressive with their controller skills. And this
can't
thing
imagine
ran
it.
for like a couple of months, I think, and they killed it. So we have empirical proof that yes, mouse and keyboard is superior for first-person shooters. It's not a discussion anymore. But some games do make it work, like Rocket League has a very
Yeah, that's
successful
it. Rocket League.
cross-platform play. They have no issues
Yeah.
there.
Well, that's not a shooter though, but
Yeah, exactly.
it's
And
pretty good with either.
yeah, exactly. But competitive first-person shooters, they keep them separate, definitely.
Yeah.
Also,
No, yeah.
like battle royale games, like
Mm.
Fortnite runs on mobile and PC, but not on the same server for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's just too much of a handicap for one player over the other. It just you can't balance it.
And also, there's on console, there's mechanics like aim assist, which you can't really use on PC, not competitively. So this is another issue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind playing some games with shooters and things on console, but only single player because I just can't deal with trying to be competitive with a controller and being quick with shooting on.
You just can't deal
So-
with being competitive in general.
No,
I
yeah, in
think
general, yeah. I get a little bit competitive. I need to get good at a game first, and then I'll get competitive. But if it's already too hard, too much of a barrier of entry to play online in a certain game, then I just don't bother.
And in the end of the day, it's just a matter of preference. Like you play
Yeah, it's
games
just
to
what's fun.
have fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there is a reason all the pros use mice and keyboards. So yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to go back a bit and mention some more games from our past. Like, I think I'm right in saying we're all fans of RPGs.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know about you two. Like, I played video game RPGs first before I played things like D&D and stuff like that.
I didn't, but that's fine.
So for me, like,
I'm with Lily here.
okay, yeah. So it's a bit of a different background there because I before I even knew what an RPG was, even in video games, I would just role play in games already. I'd play shooters and things and get in character and stuff like that. And then I discovered things like Morrowind and Neverwinter Nights as well was one of my first.
Neverwinter Nights
RPGs.
was such a good video
game.
Still is.
And then I played those, but the two that really hooked me into RPGs and stuff was Knights of the Old Republic and Fable. And I think in those it was their morality systems that really got me into role playing. Being good versus evil or dark side versus light side in Star Wars. And yeah, so I just loved those games so much, even so much that this was before I got back into PC gaming. And I think the Xbox 360 was already out, but I went and bought an old Xbox just so I could play Fable and the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic as well.
Awesome.
But yeah, I just love those RPGs, and this was all before I really even knew what like D&D and tabletop RPGs were at all. But I guess you two had a different experience there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had been playing RPGs for a long time, and I had been playing video games just for as long. I think actually the first RPG I played on the PC was Diablo.
Okay.
The original Diablo, which it's not a very glamorous game. Like there's a lot of hype about it, and I think it's because it's perceived as a cult classic. But even if you look at the most recent Diablo, it's just the same bloody game. It's not changed. The
Yeah,
aesthetic has improved a little, but it's the same thing.
those almost don't really count to me as RPGs. You know, I'm quite strict with
No,
what I call an RPG. And
of course, but
certain games like that, there's not much actually like story or roleplay to them.
No, but back in the day, Diablo was the RPG.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
the standard of the industry. So it's it's actually quite difficult because for many years, what I understood to be video game RPGs was just rubbish. It was just
Yeah.
crap in comparison to what I could do on tabletop. And it wasn't actually until I was properly thrown into Lord of the Rings Online and Skyrim that I got into video game RPGs
So
properly.
yeah, it's quite a bit later. Yeah.
Yeah. So interestingly, as much as I've been an RPG player since pretty much I was conceived, as a video gamer, I came into is completely the opposite thing than you. I came into RPG
Yeah.
video gaming quite late.
Well, I think it makes sense because I was always searching for more engaging RPGs until I found D&D, and I think that's better than video game RPGs now. So I can see skipping over the video games in that aspect. What about you, Nick?
Well, I think I stand somewhere in between the two of you. Because I've been playing video games since little kid, and I've always liked RPGs. I played lots of Diablo, just like Lily. I also played lots of Heroes, and Heroes has like RPG elements because you can go on quests and find items and stuff like this. However, language was a problem with me because I struggled with English a lot as a kid, and nobody really localizes video games in Bulgarian. So basically, we had to help each other and progress slowly through stories in games. It was a whole thing. So when my English became better, I started paying more attention to stories and started playing more story-oriented games.
Okay.
And once I was comfortable with Dungeons and Dragons, I learned the system. I remember that I discovered Neverwinter Nights. And I was like, oh, I can roll my character just like in D&D 3.5, and I know exactly what I'm doing. And this was, I think, the first RPG that I finished, and I felt amazing about it. And ever since then, I've played a lot of RPGs, but I've always tended to like action RPGs more.
Okay.
So the hack and slashy ones were the ones I prefer over like Baldur's Gate and stuff like this. But I've always played both, and I've played lots of RPGs. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that kind of does it for going over like old games. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty more we could.
There's more, but that will be
ramble
a different
about.
episode.
But what have we all been playing recently? Anything interesting? Anyone got anything?
Well, I'm sure you guys have probably been playing a lot more than me. So other than Love Nikki, and we will leave it as it is there. I think there is actually a little video game that I love playing because it's just easy. And, when you're dealing with work and PhD thesis and research and whatnot, sometimes getting involved into something that has a very complex storyline can be a bit draining. So I've as of late, or at least since I started my PhD properly, I've been playing more sort of resource management games and things like that, simply to detach myself from the overload. And there is this game I've written a review about it for Manaburnt a couple of years ago. I'm sure. I think it's in Spanish, but the game is called Metro. It's on Steam. I think.
Oh, do you mean Mini Metro?
Yeah, Mini Metro.
Metro is a bit different.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much it goes for on Steam. I think I bought it for like a $5 at the time.
Very cheap.
And it's nice because you're just there trying to plan all of these routes and lines, and it's soothing being able to organize chaos. It's the main reason why I play it. And the thing is, depending on which mode you choose, you can play the game for as long or as little as you want. So in terms of something that I play regularly without necessarily going over the top, Metro certainly, and of course Total War 2, because Warhammer Total War 2. I mean,
Yeah.
do I even need more of an explanation?
Of course.
You know, I started playing Warhammer at the sweet age of 11 years old as the only Skaven player in the entirety of the city.
Oh,
And when I knew that the rats were back in the game, there I was, straight in, killing
Yeah.
some,
Yeah.
well, anything that would come around, really. Mostly other
s-
rats and mostly things like that. But yeah, I think Total War 2, Warhammer Total War 2 is certainly been
Yeah.
probably.
by the way, it's a crime that this game is not actually called Total Warhammer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. And in
Yeah.
fact, Alex can tell you when they originally announced that the first volume was going to come out, that's actually what I said the game should be called.
Yeah. Well,
Total
everyone
Warhammer.
said it, but
Yeah,
I
because
think
Yeah, too bad GW are way too protective of their
yeah,
IP. So
yeah.
yeah.
they're all over that game, keeping it, protecting their stuff. Like they want their name to be separate from Total War in the title, and then other things like they really limited the amount of modding that can happen in those games
Mm.
because Total War has always had great modding community, and
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Lord of the Rings
as
mod is
I've
amazing.
yeah, and as I've written about on Manaburnt before, modding is just my favorite thing about video games.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, the like in Medieval 2, the Third Age Total War, the Lord of the Rings, the full Lord of the Rings conversion, and then it's got like several sub mods for it that make it even better, and it's like a fully fledged Lord of the Rings Total War game. It's a bit dated now because it's based on an old game,
Yeah.
but they can never do that again because they limit the amount of modding you can do in Total War games, and pretty much everyone does to their games these days. But even more so with Warhammer Total War, because just Games Workshop didn't want you to be able to edit the models of anything.
Yep.
They didn't want you to be able to mess with their map or anything like that.
And I think it's a shame because the actual hobby itself, it's all about customization. You
Yeah,
buy your army, and even though your army may be a Skaven army, it looks different from that other guy down the road who also has a Skaven army.
yeah, yeah,
So
Oh yeah.
I think that's been a bit of a dig
yeah.
into the community as across platforms.
I mean, people still try.
Yeah, of course.
There's still great mods for the Warhammer Total War games, and I play campaigns with about like 40 of them active at any one time. But they all do very minor things, and
Yeah.
And credit where credit is due, the game itself is amazing.
Oh, God,
so
yeah.
they
Yeah.
really did a good job.
yeah,
Yeah.
thankfully it doesn't need a lot of modding to
No,
make it.
and that
good.
that is a very fair point. If it was rubbish or if they hadn't delivered on their behalf, I could certainly understand everyone trying to improve the looks or mechanics of it. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's fair enough. We can agree on that one.
Yeah.
We had a period with a lot of crappy 40k games, and
Oh God, yes.
yeah. There's still
Total
not many
Warhammer
great
has been.
40k ones.
Well, there are gems here and there,
Here and
like
there.
Armada and stuff. But yeah, and Dawn of War obviously it's
Dawn
still
of
Yeah.
War.
good.
Although apparently Dawn of War 3 wasn't great.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about it.
That's what I've skipped over as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I mostly meant the first one.
Yeah, the first one,
The
the second one's
second
pretty
was a
good.
weird like RPG hybrid because it was based on your squads and your main
Yeah,
guns, and not so much building and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
It sort of
Hey,
made
but
sense.
Fantasy has some amazing games. I'm a huge Vermintide fan. Speaking
Oh,
of
yeah.
Skaven, Lily, I don't know if you've played Vermintide, but I've played
It's
both of them a lot.
it's on my list. I've been. The problem is, I know if I dig into something like Vermintide, that's me enslaved to the
Yeah.
computer. So I
Yeah.
am waiting. There is a few things that I am waiting to actually play once I finished my research, such as the new tycoon roller coaster.
Oh,
What's it
Planet
called?
Coaster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love tycoon games. Tycoon
Yeah.
games are fun.
That's a time
Um,
sink, so you need to get
so
into that.
exactly, yeah. So it's one of those things of a lot of the stuff that's been coming out. It is there waiting for me.
Yeah, yeah. But no, yeah,
At some point.
Vermintide 2 is an amazing game. I love it. Yeah, me
Yeah.
and a few of my friends play it all the time. It's such a good co-op game. So well made. Yeah.
Well, the playthroughs that I've seen of it just look genuine as well. Like the sort of stuff that will happen if you have Skaven involved in a storyline based on the
Yeah.
lore. Completely
Yeah.
bizarro.
There's not a ton of
total-
story in it, but
No.
yeah.
But
Well,
the sort
there's
of
just enough, I'd say.
Yeah. And it's got a lot of replayability. You can play it
Yes.
endlessly. It's so
Yeah, I
good.
was just going to since you mentioned that you don't have lots of time to play Vermintide, I was going to say, well, it's just 13 missions without the DLC. But then it's just 13 missions, but they all have like 5 difficulty levels.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've done
5 different characters to play as.
Yeah.
And then when you level them up, they've each got 3 different classes. So there's a
actually,
lot
I
in
have
there.
my Steam open right now, so I can tell you for sure. But I have only 10 hours in Vermintide 2 because it's not my favorite, but I have 111 in Vermintide 1.
All right. So
That's just
Okay.
like the
Interesting.
just casual talk then.
I'm pretty sure I completed the entire Vermintide 1. Like I did everything there is to do with Soulspire, the best.
Oh, yeah.
character.
He's my favorite as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the
The dual pistols for sure.
Right.
And the rapier, love it. Good combo. No, yeah, I love Vermintide too. I've played that way more. I got the first one, but no one else wanted to buy it. I couldn't convince anyone, so I had no one to play with. But then the second one, I've played nearly 100 hours in it now. So,
well, good news is they keep building it, and next we'll have Beastman.
yeah. That should add some interesting things. The combination of Skaven, Chaos, and Beastmen.
Yeah, Nurgle in particular. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good game. What else? Yeah, that's 2 of my biggest games I've been playing. Like my main games for the past year have been Warhammer Fantasy games, and considering I never have been into Warhammer before, they're 2 of my favorite games now: Vermintide and Warhammer Total War. So
yeah, it's just a matter of time before you start buying models.
Well, I bought a few just to paint, but I don't think I'll really play the game. But yeah, no, it's got me into Warhammer Fantasy enough that I want to try and do the Warhammer Fantasy RPG, the new one that came out recently.
It's funny you should say that. We just started our Warhammer RPG campaign this week.
Oh wow!
So,
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing this right now. My colleagues from my former office called me and they were like, "Hey, do you want to play some Warhammer Fantasy?" Play. There's a new book, and we did, and it was amazing. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So yeah, you're playing the new 4th edition then.
Yes, and I play a character from Kislev. His name is Ivan.
Oh, wow. Nice.
He gets annoyed when somebody calls him Johan because it's not his name.
That's so cool. Interestingly, the first edition of the Warhammer RPG was actually one of the first RPGs that I played with people that were not from the family. So it's always been a game that I've had very dear. And my first character ever in that game was a very, very poorly rolled thief from Nuln.
Nice.
That actually became a super awesome badass assassin that got involved in some pretty hardcore plot with dark elves in the New World on a ship, which ended up crashing, and we all died. No one survived that mission. No one survived.
I was just going to say, becoming awesome, whatever in Warhammer
it just means you
statistical
die.
improbability.
Seems hard. Yeah, it seems brutal. Yeah, I can't wait to play it.
Yeah,
but no, I've never played the Warhammer Fantasy RPGs before, so I'm gonna try and GM the new one and see how that goes. Lily's playing in it. She's rolled another criminal, it seems.
I don't mean it. I don't know how these characters of dubious backgrounds keep on coming to me. All right.
It's gonna be. It should be an interesting game though, because Lily's rolled just some random lowly criminal. And then 2 of the other characters have rolled like high elves, and one of them is a noble. So I don't know how they're going to fit together, but
we don't have this problem. Our group is a thief, a smuggler, a sailor, and something else. So it's
it all goes together well.
Yeah, we're clearly a pirate crew.
Yeah.
So we're just looking for a ship to steal, and we can start our career. Yep. But everybody knows that. Yeah, we're just pirates. So I'm quite happy with this.
Nice.
But anyway, we should discuss RPGs probably some other podcast.
Oh yeah, totally.
Next to video games.
Well, it's current, but it's fine. There's the
I've
Warhammer.
been playing lots of Hades recently, and I'm all about that.
What's that?
Not sure if you're familiar.
No,
Do you
I'm
know
not familiar with Hades.
Super Giant Games?
I've heard of them. What do they
Yeah,
make?
they're my absolutely favorite studio. They made a game called Bastion back in the day.
Yeah,
Oh,
an
yeah.
action
Bastion,
RPG.
yeah.
Yes. Then they made Transistor, which is
Yeah.
very
Mhm.
critically acclaimed. Then they made Pyre, and now they just launched their fourth game. It's in early access, which was a bit of a surprise. It's an action RPG in the style of Bastion, but it's Greek mythology. You're
Nice.
the
Okay.
son of Hades, and you try to escape from the underworld and go
Oh.
in the land of the living. And it's procedurally generated dungeon crawler.
Mhm.
So every time the map is different, the enemies are different, but the goal is the same. You're meant to escape the dungeon.
Okay.
And the game has very clever way of explaining this. They're like, well, the underworld was designed in so you can't escape. So there's obstacles in the way, and there's enemies in the way, and the corridors are always different because you're not meant to escape. And your father, the god Hades, is doing everything he can to stop you. And like this is surface level gameplay stuff, but the game is incredibly deep in terms of story and atmosphere and characters.
Nice.
Everybody is voice acted. There's beautiful music as always, and the game is just full of character and it's beautiful.
Okay.
All of Supergiant games have this very handmade aesthetic.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I've never
And
played
even-
one, but they look
Oh
good.
yeah, they're visually striking, and even when there were just a couple of, well, not a couple, but like 8 guys, they were extremely small team. They had a dedicated musician on the team. So
Yeah.
That's awesome.
like sound and visuals are extremely important to
Yeah.
them.
And I know people love the narrator in Bastion.
Yeah, he's back. He plays Hades and couple
Oh,
other
okay.
characters. Yeah. Also, his name is Logan Cunningham. He's the voice of Transistor too. Like he's
Okay.
so talented
right.
that people can't even tell
Yeah.
it's the same guy. But yeah, and Darren Korb, the guy who makes all the music, he is a voice actor in Hades. Voices the main character Zagreus, and it's amazing. I love it.
Nice.
It does
Nice.
sound like a really
So, yeah.
nice game.
I'll have to check that out.
Definitely recommend it. For better or worse, it's an Epic Store exclusive.
Mhm.
Oh,
It
okay.
was
One
part
of those.
of their, yeah, they're doing this. They're just buying exclusives now. But when the store launched, Hades was a launch title from the very beginning.
Okay.
And the game is still in early access. They drop a major update every month. And I think they will be doing this for a year before they consider the game completed.
Yeah.
So we've had like 4 updates
Yeah.
since launch, and the game
That's not bad.
will expand a lot.
All right. Well, I'll probably keep an eye on that and maybe see
No,
it when it comes
does
out.
sound like a very interesting thing. Yeah.
Speaking of like Greek mythology games, that kind of reminds me of one that came out a couple of years ago that I played. I've not played it recently or anything, but I'll just bring it up. Called what was it called? It was called Apotheon. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, I haven't heard
It's
of
a very
that one.
small, like, not very well known game, but it's like a side-scrolling combat game.
Oh, wait.
People call it like a Metroidvania style game.
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
It's so good if you like sort of like
the
Greek
aesthetic
mythology stuff.
is very special.
Yeah, it all looks like Greek Greek art on from Greek vases.
Yes, I definitely. Now that you've said that, I definitely know exactly which one it is.
Yeah, that's a great game in terms of like it's like Greek mythology as well. Like so, you're like I can't remember the story. Like the story's not very important, which is strange for me to play a game like that. But you're basically just going throughout and killing all the gods, basically,
Nice.
as is pretty standard.
Yeah, there's no major PlayStation games that have the same premise.
yeah.
Or Titan Quest for
Yeah.
PC gamers.
Yeah. People love to kill those Greek gods.
Yeah. Well, in
Yeah.
Hades, you don't kill the gods; they help you. So
Yeah.
finally,
Okay.
first, yeah.
Oh, maybe they'll when they fully release the game, maybe you'll kill them at the end. Who knows?
Slight
Oh.
plot twist.
Psych! It
Yes.
was just a God of War prequel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what else have we been playing recently? I've been playing. Speaking of how we're all PC gamers and stuff, I actually last year bought a PS4, and that's the first console I've bought in like quite a few years. But there was too many good games out last year, so God of War, which I've still not played much of, but I want to get around to the new Norse mythology God of War. But the main one I've been playing is Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
Oh,
That game, I won't. There's not much I can say about it because it's so just story focused. It's just such a good story, and the gameplay is great as well. It's just so detailed, and it's just cowboy simulator basically. Like you can just do everything you'd ever want to do in the Wild West, but then on top of that, there's just such a great story.
yeah. Not to mention horseball physics, which was
Yeah.
very
That's what I'm
big
talking
technical
about.
improvement.
Just the attention to detail. Yeah. So yeah, what else? Another little like PC game I've played recently that people might not have heard of is called Dawn of Man. I don't know if people have seen that.
No, I've not heard of that.
I mentioned earlier in like RTSs how I like to just build nice villages and stuff. Well, this is that. This is a city builder, but it's not really about cities because it's prehistoric. And it's quite good on its sort of like prehistoric accuracy because it goes through from the Paleolithic to the Mesolithic, the Neolithic, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and it ends at the end of the Iron Age when you start developing steel. But it's quite interesting in terms of its history because the gameplay changes quite substantially as you go through the game. So at the start of the game, you're really struggling to survive with a small tribe, and there's quite a lot of micromanagement to like you're gathering together hunting parties to go and take down mammoths and things like that, and it's quite hard. Or like defending yourself against like saber-toothed tiger attacks, and or if it's winter, you're trying not to freeze to death because you've just got to huddle around the fire. And then when it just advances through the ages, you start developing like domesticated animals and farming and things like that, and it becomes much more of a sprawling city management game, and it can get quite big. And then the more dangerous animals start dying off as it goes through time, and the most dangerous animal of all starts coming out, and that's other humans. So other like raiding parties start coming to try and kidnap your people and kill them and all that. And yeah, it's quite an interesting game.
Sounds really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like a good combination between like an RTS and just a city management game.
Sounds like what Spore tried to do back in the day.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, it's got. Yeah, there were things about Spore I liked about that. Yeah, the way the game changes throughout time. This isn't as ambitious as that because it's not about evolution to
the way you describe
spacefaring.
It sounds more focused.
Yeah.
That's great.
And
also, this is a period that's not really covered a lot in video games. Like we have,
you see a lot of medieval stuff.
Primal and stuff, but not too many games like that.
Yeah, and you get like Age of Empires and stuff. A main aspect of that is going through different ages and advancing, but
and
that's only focused on like early medieval to late medieval, where there's not a huge amount of difference in terms of like fundamental gameplay. But the way the game changes drastically in this, for such a small, like simple game that's come out of nowhere, it handles it really well.
Sounds great.
So yeah, I thought it was just an interesting one that people might not have heard of.
So yeah, just by the end of this recording, I'm gonna end up with so many games I'm gonna have to play. I don't think I'm gonna be able to manage it. And actually, on that note, I know that this is something we want to cover, but is there anything that you guys are actually looking forward that is coming out soon? Because I'm pretty much out of the loop. I'm actively out of the loop to not sort of distract myself
Yeah,
from the main goal. But like I know that, for example, everyone is raging about the fact that the new Borderlands game is coming out, and there is a board game that is also associated with the new Borderlands release. But I don't know if there is anything in particular you guys are actually sort of,
yeah,
waiting patiently.
yeah. I know you've played a bit of you like a bit of Crusader Kings too, don't you? Things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I know you. I'll probably prefer Crusader Kings over it as well because it's medieval. But the new game made by Paradox, called Imperator Rome, is coming out.
yeah. I've heard about that.
That looks quite good because it's taking various aspects from their more recent grand strategy games, like Stellaris, which is their sci-fi one,
Yeah,
and their World War II one, Hearts
yeah,
of Iron. So all the interesting stuff with like combat and technology development and all of that, and they're applying it just to like classical history.
yeah. Just
So that's going to be quite an interesting one.
hmm.
Um, I think that's coming out in just a few days, actually. So
Oh wow. Okay,
that'll be
so
cool.
very very new and
Um,
recent releases.
yeah,
So
but you can kind of the problem with that game is as good as it looks, you can kind of see they're setting it up to really nickel and dime you with a bunch of DLC, like they love to. Like
yeah.
all of those games have a list of about 10 pages of like
Mm.
tiny DLC and a few big ones.
Yep.
Yeah,
Um,
they cost like thousands of euros if you want to get them.
Yeah, if you want to buy it all brand new, yeah, you just have to wait for a sale when it all goes on sale for a decent price. But with this one, they've limited the time period to like just the Roman Republic, and that's it. Like not much before and nothing after it. Like ends at the time of like Julius Caesar or something like that. So
I mean,
it's really limited scope in terms of time period. So
I think that's fair enough because considering that some of the other games they've released, like Europa Universalis
yeah,
was the other one, they just cover the entirety. It's just such a huge period of time
yeah,
and such a huge map. It can become an absolute nightmare to just manage it. So if they're just doing a
yeah,
new one that is just purely focused on
yeah. It definitely makes sense. Yeah,
Rome, then that's it.
yeah.
And I think it's a history period that really propitiates itself for the actual game mechanic. So yeah, I can certainly see the appeal.
Yeah, that sort of very like political game and all that definitely suits it to that period. But I can tell already that they're going to introduce like 4 different DLCs
Oh
that
yeah, of course.
push the time period back and forward by a few hundred years.
It's gonna be
Um,
DLC shopping spree.
but that's just what we live with these days.
Sadly, that's how the industry's going.
Um,
What
there's
about
a few
you?
other things coming out, but yeah, do you have anything you're looking forward to, Nick?
Well, generally, I try not to look forward to new games because I have a huge backlog of games that I
Yeah.
need to finish. I've more than 300 games in Steam, and I
Yeah.
played them. But I'm actually looking forward to the new Vampire the Masquerade game.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
one
Bloodlines.
exception I've made.
Right?
I
Yeah.
am
I
Yeah.
believe
waiting for
that's
Bloodlines to like nothing. Oh,
I
Yeah.
believe it's coming out next year.
Yeah.
Which is
It's
good.
still
Because there's been a lot of like game announcements where they announce it
hmm
these days, and it's not coming out for another 5 years, which has
yeah.
just been
yeah.
annoying.
That's
But
that's why I avoided getting hyped like Cyberpunk, for example, because I
yeah,
know it's not coming anytime soon.
Cyberpunk is a big
Yeah.
one. But
No,
no, yeah, Vampire
But
Bloodlines
yeah,
2. There's no
so
Bloodlines.
gameplay or any details yet, but I'm hoping it'll be good.
I have no doubt that the game would be good because the thing is, the original game was actually a really good game. Yeah, maybe it looked a bit dated by the time it came out, but as a 100% born and bred Vampire the Masquerade World of Darkness fan, the game
Hmm.
actually really brought that world alive, even though it may have not looked as polished as some other
yeah.
products of the time. It was genuinely a lot of fun.
Hmm.
And I think that technology has advanced now, particularly in terms of graphics, to a degree where a very visually aesthetic game such as this one can really properly flourish and really become well, I don't want to say a masterpiece because I don't want all of my hopes and dreams to be crashed.
Well, yeah,
I genuinely think it's gonna be a really good game, and I think it's gonna have some interesting mechanics. Like, I know they've been keeping it secret, but I don't know. I just get a good feeling about it.
well, it's hard to say when I think the first one came out like mid 2000s or something. So it's hard to say when a sequel has come out that long after,
Mm,
and I don't even is it made by the same people? I'm not even sure.
I
Um,
can't tell you.
so you don't really have anything to go on with how
No.
good it's going to be. It's all just guesswork at the moment. But
Yep.
if they
It's just
build
zero
upon what the old game was good at, I mean,
Yeah.
I played it when I was a kid, so I didn't really know what I was doing. But the fact that it was just such a good like story focused like RPG, and your character creation actually had a big effect on the gameplay with like choosing your vampire clan, and the different options that gave you in gameplay. If they stick to that, then that's all I really want.
Yeah, the general consensus is that the original game was very buggy, and that's
Yep.
the biggest issue with it. But the gameplay was amazing, the story was well crafted, and it's a cult classic even to this day.
Yeah.
So if they take what made the first game good and just use the new technology and skill that people have acquired, I think the game will be solid.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, I actually feel that this game will be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a few other things coming out, and they're all kind of a bit similar, like Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines, and Cyberpunk. We've already talked about. These
Yeah.
are all sort of like really story-focused single-player games.
Oh, yeah, and they recently announced the new Star Wars game.
Yeah, I was about to mention that.
Single player,
and yeah, the big thing about that is, everyone knows that EA is the worst games company around, because they just want to go with what makes the most money, and these days that's multiplayer games or something where they just stick a load of loot boxes and other things like that in. So everyone's patting them on the back now for saying the new Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, I think it's called.
Yeah.
They've decided to make it a normal game rather than full of all this
they
crap.
They did what normally Red does, and they're like, "Hey guys, we want Nico and Daimyo, and there's no day one DLC.
We'll just make a good single player game.
How about that?
With no forced online stuff, no random crap. It's just gonna be a game. That's so rare these days from big companies. So, and EA especially have messed up their Star Wars license for the last few years.
Respawn really did them a huge favor with Apex Legends because they helped with their image a lot, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, again, with that game, there's no real details apart from the good news that it'll just be a decent single player game for the most part. So we'll see how that comes out.
Yeah. Also, they have lots of assets to use because there's like 2 or 3 canceled Star Wars games now.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's funny that they're making this now. There's like there were going to be like over the past few years there were going to be a handful of single player RPGs or just single player like story based action games all set in Star Wars, and they just scrapped them all because they wanted to make MMOs or online games or other things. Because for over a decade and a half now, big publishers have been saying, "Oh, single player's dead. Everyone wants just to play multiplayer now." But certain games come along and prove that completely wrong. So maybe they're starting to realize that people like well-crafted games that they can just play and enjoy on their own sometimes. But we'll see how that works out. Speaking of RPGs and things, there's a game coming out this year called The Outer Worlds, which I'm quite looking forward to.
You've talked to me about this before, but I don't actually. That's it. That's all I know about
by
it.
The original makers of Fallout.
And Obsidian. So Obsidian's such a weird developer because a lot of the games of theirs that I like are like their weird like sequels they've made to other people's games. Like they made Neverwinter Nights 2, they made Knights of the Old Republic 2, and they made Fallout New Vegas. So they a lot of the time their best games have not been their own original stuff. And in recent years they've made things like Pillars of Eternity, which are sort of their Baldur's Gate style classic RPGs. But I wasn't particularly into those, so I'm quite interested to see what they do with Outer Worlds, because that's going to be a big, high budget, modern graphics, single player RPG, like with first person shooter aspects to it. So something like Fallout, but hopefully a lot better, because they've always been good at creating worlds and stories. Yeah, sci-fi. Yeah.
Yeah, and also they excel in writing. This
Exactly.
is definitely their strong suit, so we can expect great story, great narrative.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Because people always say that, like, and I think I agree, like, for example, Knights of the Old Republic is one of my favorite RPGs of all time, but the second one just had such a more interesting and deep story to it going on, I think. And that's just because they took control of it instead of BioWare. But yeah, we'll see how that comes out. I think that's coming out in a few months or something, so or maybe beginning of next year. But yeah, again, a lot of games I'm looking forward to are like several years away, so it's good to have a couple of things that are not too far off. Because on the horizon, eventually there'll be a new Elder Scrolls.
Oh yes,
Elder
the
Scrolls
announcement
6.
on that front have been quite interesting as well. So
yeah,
but again, I don't really want to get too hyped about these things because
no,
it just always ends up in tears and drama.
Yeah, Bethesda in the last few years have been a bit disappointing, to say the least. They really need to pull their finger out with Elder Scrolls 6, otherwise I can't see them doing very well. I mean, I'm sure people will buy it because it's Elder Scrolls. Skyrim is one of the best-selling games of all time now, but they can't rely on that alone for too long. They need to actually innovate somewhere, like they used to.
They've been struggling with the same issues for the past like 10 years or more.
Yeah.
And that's due to fundamental flaws in their engine. So people are now begging them to change their engine.
And apparently they won't. Apparently they're just upgrading it again, like they said they already have. But hopefully this is a more substantial upgrade than they said they did with Fallout 4, which didn't feel that much. It was just, a bit graphically better, and that's mostly it.
Sorry.
You go.
I was going to say that I'm personally about a very nerdy aspect of Elder Scrolls 6. They said that they'll be using photogrammetry, which means that they'll be taking pictures of real-world objects and putting them in the game.
Yeah.
This is something that the company I work for right now is doing, so this is like a personal nerdy thing for me.
I mean, that's cool. It'll look good then.
I'm glad that they're finally making it in gaming. It's going to be beneficial, I think.
Yeah. So at the very least, it'll look good, and they're sort of innovating there. But hopefully, that's not where they stop the improvements. Hopefully, there's more fundamental gameplay improvements.
And you can't really do photogrammed Argonians, so
get some lizards.
Just go to the desert, film some geckos, and then just play it over. Oh, that sounds amazing. Well, on that note, I think we're reaching the end. So if I could ask you two to, out of all of the games that you may have literally on your stockpile right now, to recommend to people that you should go and play this game, not necessarily the best game, not necessarily the prettiest game, just one that you think that would be amazing, just out of the blue, even if it's for a couple of hours. Which one would your two picks be, Nikola and Alex?
Easy. That would be Transistor by Supergiant. It's free right now on Epic Store, so just go and click the button and get it for free and play it, please.
There you go. And you, Alex?
Oh, what do I say? I might say something I wish more people played. But I know it won't be everyone's cup of tea. But it's Insurgency Sandstorm. I'm quite into sort of semi-hardcore first-person shooters, and I think this game needs a lot more love because it's just got such a great developer who came out of the modding scene. You know, they originally started making just source mods for their own games, and Insurgency Sandstorm is their latest one they've come out with. It released officially at the beginning of this year, and it's only got a very small player base, so I hope more people play it. It's just a really well polished, really well detailed multiplayer first person shooter, and it's just really solid. So stop playing Call of Duty and things like that and play this, because it's just marvelous.
Excellent. Well, with those two recommendations, I think here comes the end of our first in many to come, apparently, by how the discussion has gone into our line of video game discussions. So we'll be seeing you in the next one. We will have some special guests joining us on board. We will not spoil them just yet. So just tune in and have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.